Welcome back to Hot Mic Cold Virus. My name's Rochelle Beard, and I'm your host. If you caught our last episode, you know I got to dive deep into the world of science communication with the hosts of This Podcast Will Kill You. What it is, why it matters, and how to cut through the noise in a world full of misinformation. Today, we're going to keep with that momentum with part 2, a full-on myth-busting special. From fevers and food safety to dogs' mouths, I'm going to help you break down these common myths and replace them with science-based facts. Today, we're going to dive into 4 different myths, with our first one being cold weather gives you a cold. How many times have we heard our grandparents or our parents say, put on a hat or you'll catch a cold? If you go out with wet hair, you're going to get a cold. Bundle up or you're going to get the sniffles. A chill in the bones brings illness home. That one I haven't heard, but sure someone has. The whole point of this myth is that cold weather is going to make you sick. Being out in the cold without a jacket is going to make you ill. Well, you know what? Truth be told, that's not true. It is a total myth. The cold's not going to make you sick. Colds are caused by viruses. So let's go talk a little bit about the science and see why people think that being out in the cold could actually cause you to get a cold. Obviously, in the winter, the temperatures are a little chillier. More people spend more time indoors. And so you're in closer proximity. And when you're in closer proximity to each other, it's easier for someone to cough on you, sneeze on you, makes it just easier for viruses to spread because you're close together. You don't have like good air circulation from the wind being outside. You're in those confined spaces and the air movement's not so great. So ultimately, you're more likely to get sick simply because you've been indoors more times than others. Another thing is that lower humidity in cold weather helps to keep these viruses airborne for longer, and it also dries out the mucous membranes in your nose, which then makes it easier for viruses to enter into your body because they don't have to fight against that moisture or humidity that's in your nasal passages. So this is why a lot of times in the winter, you may use a humidifier. I know I do with my children because it makes it a little bit more difficult for a virus to travel up through those respiratory passages and get into your body to make you ill. Some studies also show that cooler temperatures may suppress the immune response in your nasal passages, which reduces the body's ability to actually even fight off this virus right when it enters. So from the get-go, you're already at a reduced capacity to fight the infection. Some other researchers have found that higher levels in humidity within your home may actually inactivate the flu virus. We know it's good to keep your relative humidity levels in your home somewhere between 30 and 60%. With that said, it depends on what you're actually trying to prevent. If humidity is too low within your home, there's a bigger risk of exposure to these respiratory illnesses, allergic reactions, and like asthma causing things that are in the air. The dry air allows the viral particles to be suspended in the air, which makes it easier for them to travel. And then they stay suspended for longer periods of time because they're not weighed down by that moisture or the humidity in the air. They don't fall to the ground. They're going to float around, which makes it easier to infect you because they're floating in the air. Whereas too high of relative humidity, like in your house, can actually increase your risk of exposure to some other viruses like COVID-19 and maybe mold causing, which can also lead to asthma attacks. So you really have to get like that sweet spot for the humidity within your home. And then a cool thing about moisture and humidity in the air is that you've got hydrogen peroxide. This is a common disinfectant that we're aware of. It can spontaneously form in water microdroplets. Researchers from the Stanford report have discovered that the concentration of hydrogen peroxide increases as the humidity increases. So when you have higher humidity, you're increasing the amount of hydrogen peroxide in the air, which means you just have like some floating natural disinfectants. So in summary for this myth, if you forget your hat, it's not going to cause you to get a cold in January. If you hang out too long indoors next to some people, you might catch that cold if they sneeze on you and don't cough or sneeze into their arm. But not wearing your jacket, walking out to the car is not going to cause you to get sick. Or if you don't have a hair dryer on you and you have wet hair out when you're going out in February is not going to cause you to get ill either. Let's move on to our next myth. The claim here is that you can sweat out a fever. How many times have you heard that? I just had to sweat it out and get it over with. Well, that's also not true. So the claim, if you bundle up and sweat enough, you'll get rid of that fever faster. Actually, fevers are your body's natural way to fight infection. And trying to artificially raise your body temperature through bundling up can actually be way more dangerous than the fever itself. So let's dive into the science on this one. Fevers help your body inhibit the growth of viruses and bacteria, and it helps to rev up your immune response. Many viruses and bacteria love your normal body temperature. So they love that like 98.6 temp and they thrive. So when your body temperature is raised with the fever, this is helping to create a hostile environment against these viruses and bacteria because it's making them uncomfortable and making it a little bit more difficult for them to replicate and spread. So we like fevers. A higher temperature also helps to boost your white blood cell activity, especially your neutrophils and your lymphocytes, and these are crucial to fight infections. The higher temperature also speeds up production of your antibodies to fight these infections. You know how when you're sick, when you have a fever, you're usually tired, you don't really want to do anything, and maybe you're not really hungry, you have a decrease in appetite? That's not just because you're sick, it's actually a feature of that fever. These symptoms redirect your energy away from digestion if you were eating a normal diet and away from that physical activity if you felt like you wanted to get up and do everything you normally do. And it puts that energy towards fighting off the infections. So really cool that just the natural way you feel when you have a fever is also lending itself to fighting infections passively, actually. A fever also helps trigger the release of heat shock proteins. These are proteins that help repair damaged cells, and they increase your body's ability to cope with stress. Fever and inflammation work together to mobilize your immune cells to the infected areas. So think when you have like a wound that is infected with the heat, the swelling, the redness, that's all working together to get those immune cells to fight the infection at that injury. Fevers are very good, as I've gone through all those reasons, but very high fevers, like prolonged fevers over 104, can actually be dangerous. And this is why you don't want to sweat out your fever. You don't want to artificially increase your body temperature. It could actually make you feel worse and could take you to dangerous levels, and you don't want to get there. Sweating can also lead to fluid loss and dehydration. So if you're already like not wanting to get up and not drink or not eating, you're not getting those fluids, then you're increasing your body temperature and trying to sweat it out. You're not doing yourself any favors. It can already cause a problem with that dehydration. So what can you do here? Don't sweat out your fever. Keep your environment at a comfortable temperature. Use light blankets, dress in layers that you can take off. Don't try to sweat it out. Stay hydrated, rest, and then take fever reducers as needed. So again, that low fever's A-okay. We like it. It's mobilizing the troops and getting everything going, but we don't want to have that prolonged high fever that can end up being dangerous or detrimental later. So just as a summary here, trying to sweat out a fever is like throwing gasoline on a controlled fire. So you're just making things hotter and harder to manage. The fire was serving a purpose when you're doing a controlled burn, but then you throw gasoline on it and it just gets completely out of control. You've now missed the mark on what you're trying to do, and you've caused another problem that you didn't need from the get-go. All right, we've tackled 2 myths so far. Let's move on to number 3. The next one is, I'd say, one of my favorites and probably one I have to tackle like every week. Food is safe to eat as long as it smells okay. I don't know how many times I've had my husband ask me to smell like lunch meat or something. And I tell him that just because it smells okay doesn't mean that it actually is okay. Just a little side note on that. He hasn't had a full sense of smell since when he got COVID in 2020. So he really can't smell if something smells bad. But I had to explain to him that that's not always a good or clear indicator. So why not? A lot of times I think people would think if food smells fine, it's not spoiled and is cool to eat. That is not true. Many foodborne pathogens do not cause any changes to smell, taste, or appearance. So why does food smell bad? As food spoils, bacteria and fungi start digesting proteins, fats, and carbs. This process is what releases those smelly byproducts like ammonia or different sulfur compounds that give you that rotten egg smell or that nasty garbage smell or like something's decaying and rotting. Sometimes the smell is also caused by chemical changes. Fats go rancid through oxidation, which makes that sour or bitter smell. Proteins break down into amines and sulfur compounds, which are known for those strong, unpleasant odors. Again, emphasis on this. Not all spoiled food smells bad. A couple bacteria, Listeria, Salmonella, and E. coli, they can all grow on food without any visible or like smelly olfactory signs. Let's talk a little bit about two of these. First, let's talk about Listeria. I actually just read about an outbreak going on just today, actually, about Listeria. So Listeria is a type of bacteria that causes a serious infection called listeriosis. It's often linked to contaminated food, food like soft cheeses, deli meats, unpasteurized dairy, and like your ready-to-eat foods. So these are the foods that the United States always advises pregnant women not to eat because of this listeria risk, and you can't detect if it has been contaminated or not. It primarily affects pregnant people, newborns, older adults, and then those with weakened immune systems. Symptoms of listeriosis is fever, muscle aches, nausea, and diarrhea. Sometimes severe cases can lead to meningitis and even miscarriage. Listeria monocytogenes can grow at refrigerator temperatures, which makes it unique, and which is why in these ready-made foods, it can cause a problem. Another group of bacteria, Salmonella, often causes foodborne illnesses known as salmonellosis, spreads through contaminated food, water, or even contact with infected animals. It's often found in raw or undercooked eggs, poultry, meat, unpasteurized milk, and produce, with symptoms of diarrhea, fever, stomach cramps, sometimes vomiting, and it usually lasts 4 to 7 days. So it's not a really quick illness. At risk, we've got young children, older adults, immunocompromised individuals who can develop severe illnesses and complications. You prevent salmonellosis by cooking your foods to safe temperatures, avoiding raw eggs, wash your produce, and then practice good hand hygiene, because if you're touching that raw eggs or the raw meat, you want to make sure to wash your hands off so you don't risk contamination. So going back to the smelling bad, not all spoilage involves the odor-producing microbes or chemical changes. Listeria and Salmonella are pathogenic bacteria that can multiply without producing any odor, any color changes, or any of that slime that makes it visually unappealing. These bacteria are super stealthy, but super harmful. The food that mainly spoils from pathogen growth and not chemical spoilage will likely look and smell fine, but is still going to be bad. Smell and taste are not reliable indications of food safety. So make sure you follow expiration dates and storage guidelines. Don't give it the sniff test. Keep cold foods cold, below 40 degrees, and hot foods hot, above 140 degrees. And when in doubt, throw it out. Don't test it. Don't taste it. Don't ask your wife to smell it. Just toss it. Trust your nose for perfume, not pathogens. Some of our nastiest bugs are going to be totally odorless. So, speaking of odors, we're going to move on to dogs now. Who has ever been told a dog's mouth is cleaner than a human's? Or when you go give your dog a kiss, like you think it's okay because a dog's mouth is supposedly cleaner than humans? Well, I hate to break it to you guys. I'm going to hold your hand while I say this. It's not true. I mean, maybe sometimes, but not necessarily true. Dogs have tons of bacteria in their mouths, just like we do as humans. The thing is, they're different bacteria. And while many of them aren't good for us, a lot of times they may not infect us. So the myth for a dog's mouth being cleaner than humans most likely comes from the idea that dogs lick their wounds like all the time and the wounds seem to heal. But that really has more to do with the physical cleaning than like their magically clean mouth. And we could go into cleaning and disinfection practices, but licking obviously causes friction, and they could be just physically removing the dirt and grime and germs from their skin or their wound, and that is why it doesn't cause them to get infected. It's more the cleaning action than the actual components of what's in their saliva or on their tongues. So dogs can carry bacteria like Pasteurella or Capnocyte. I had a hard time saying this one earlier. I'm going to slow it down here. Capnocytophaga, or even MRSA or Salmonella from sniffing or licking these dirty surfaces and all the nasty stuff that they eat. That I have no idea what my dog chews on outside, and it kind of worries me. But let's dive into some of these bacteria that hang out in dogs' mouths. So Pasteurella is a type of bacteria that's commonly found in mouths, noses, and respiratory tracts of healthy dogs and of cats. One species, Pasteurella multocida, is especially notable and found often in these animals. In dogs, it's part of their normal oral flora, and it usually doesn't cause illness in the animal itself. In humans, though, it can cause infections if transmitted during dog bites, scratches, or sometimes even licks if they're licking some broken skin. So if you have a cut on your hand and a dog licks it, the Pasteurella can infect the cut on your hand. Symptoms in humans, you've got redness, swelling, pain at the wound site, and even in severe cases, infection can spread to the joints, bones, or the bloodstream. The risk factors here are higher risk in kiddos, older adults, and again, people with weakened immune systems. Now let's talk about the hard to pronounce one. Capnocytophaga is a type of bacteria that's commonly found in, again, mouths of healthy dogs and cats. It usually doesn't harm animals, but it can cause severe infections in humans at some times. It's rare, but it can happen, especially if it's transmitted through bites, scratches, or again, licks on broken skin. In humans, these infections can lead to severe illness like sepsis, tissue infections, or even amputations, although this is still extremely rare. The high-risk groups are, again, the same. People with weakened immune systems, cancer, diabetes, or those without a spleen are definitely super vulnerable. Symptoms for this are fever, vomiting, confusion, pain, redness near the wound, and usually happens within 1 to 14 days of exposure. So how do you prevent this from happening? Do not let your dog lick your wounds. Always clean dog bites or scratches thoroughly. And if you start to have signs of infection after a dog bite, or if you have a wound, broken skin, you notice signs of infection, make sure to seek care. Dog bites can lead to serious infections if left untreated. Even licking your face, having your dog lick your face or your wounds can transmit bacteria. And again, super dangerous for immunocompromised people. Your dog's tongue is great for love, not on your face, not good for first aid. Their mouths are super full of bacteria, just as dangerous as a human. So beware. Well, that was myth number 4. That's a wrap on today's myth busting session. We've tackled everything from fevers to food safety to dog drool, and hopefully you're walking away with some facts that stick. Remember, just because something is widely believed does not make it scientifically sound. So the next time you hear a myth that sounds just a little bit off, go ahead and make sure to fact check it. Thank you for listening to Hot Mic Cold Virus. Be sure to subscribe, share this episode with someone who still thinks that cold weather causes colds, and check out our podcast's new Instagram account at Hot Mic Cold Virus. We'll be posting new episode updates. You can also check out my website for RBIP Consulting, www.rbipconsulting.com, and also reach out to me via email, RochelleBeard@outlook.com. Thanks so much for joining, and I can't wait for you to hear our next episode. Have a great one.